Hey kids, I hope you're having a good day. This is Papa. I don't have all my mustache stuff on, but I do have my hat. I was gonna share with you something that I found recently and I thought it was sort of interesting. I've been doing a little bit of my own personal history, and there was a box I'd never really gone through before. But I found out that my mom saved a number of things that I did when I was early in school, like kindergarten and first grade and second grade and third grade and fourth grade and fifth grade and sixth grade. And she kept all my report cards, a lot of my homework assignments. There's comments from teachers, and I apparently wrote some stories that I'd forgotten about. So I was going to read you a story from when I was 9 years old. It was back in 1963. And I had totally forgotten about it, and I thought it was something sort of special, and I wanted to read it to you. So when my mom wrote on this, I was 9.5 years old. When I was about 9 years old, I did this for school, and I'm going to read it to you so you can sort of see what I was doing when I was 9 years old. So I wrote a book, and it says My Dragon by Jeff Nyland. And so it's stapled together. Maybe you can see the staples. And it's sort of a little bit interesting. You can't see this too well, it's pretty faded, but this is my table of contents. And it says on page 1, it's called My Beautiful Dragon. On page 3, My Good Dragon. Page 5, My Good Little Dragon. Page 7, My Brave Dragon. And page 9, My Chubby Dragon. So I must have been into dragons. So I wrote this book, and it's full of some little stories. And so we'll start with the first one and see how that goes. But first, I drew a picture of my dragon. And maybe you can look at that. It looks a little bit like a horse or a dog, with some big spikes, sort of a big mouth, and it's got the eyes, and you can see something coming out of its mouth, sort of. Well, that's the picture of my dragon, and there's a bunch of stories about it. So let's start with the first one. Here's what I first wrote, and you can see my actual handwriting from when I was 9.5 years old. And this says Jeffrey Nyland, March 21st, 1963, page 1. And so let me read about my beautiful dragon. I have a dragon, and he looks so ugly. I don't want to scare you, but I want to tell you about him. He has blood drooling down his mouth, and he has big sharp teeth. I don't remember writing this, but when you look at the picture, maybe you can see that must be the blood drooling out of his mouth. And this story says he's a beautiful dragon, but then it says he's ugly. And he has big, sharp teeth. He is so big, I can't tell you. He is so ugly, you can't imagine. The next story is My Good Little Dragon. Once I had a dragon. He was a bad dragon. When I told him to go out and play, he would not. He would throw things at me. I went to a store and I asked them if they had some dragon pills, but they told me to go to the doctor. doctor. I went to the doctor and I asked him if he had some dragon pills. He said no, but he did say that he knew where I could get them. He said there were some on an island. I got a plane that went to the island. I saw a little store. On the top of the store it said, dragon pills. But the dragon pills cost $50. Back then, $50 was a lot of money. I was lucky that I had $50. I took the plane back to California. That's where I was living at the time. When I went home, my dragon was glad to see me. I gave him some dragon pills, and now he is all right. Wow, that's the second story about my little dragon that I drew. So, let's see what the third story is. Let's see, make sure I get the right one here. Yeah, I've got a lot of stories in here. Good dragon, my good dragon. My dragon is a good dragon, even though he has blood drooling down his mouth. He is so smart that I can't tell you. He is very brave. If you tell him to drink a glass of fire, he will. I do not know why he will. He says it is like water. Well, I guess my dragon can drink fire water in a glass and not even worry about it. Well, let's see what the next story has. My brave dragon. I wrote this on June 7th of 1963. My dragon was once a cowardly dragon. If he saw a mouse, he would run away. If a little baby went to pet him, he would run away. One day, about 5 in the morning, the house caught on fire. I got everything out of the house and I turned on the water, but it did not help. So I ran to my dragon. He was asleep. I woke him up and I told him to get some water and put it all over the house. He did, and the fire stopped. So the dragon was very helpful. So now you're getting to know a little bit more about this funny little dragon that I drew when I was 9 and a half. I think the last story is my chubby dragon. Okay, I had a dragon. He was thin, and of all things, he was tall. He could even go through a real thin door. He was thin for a long time. I looked in the paper. That's like going on the internet. When you looked in the newspaper back then, you could look up different things a little bit. So I looked in the paper, and that's because the internet didn't even exist back then. I looked in the paper, but I could not find a thing to help him. I went to the store and I asked them for some fattening pills. They said to go to the doctor. I went to the doctor and he said yes. He said, yes, I do have some fattening pills. I gave them to my dragon. Now he was all right. So that's all my story in this little book I wrote. It's a couple of different stories. Looks like each week I was writing a little different story. It started in March 21st of 1963, and the last one, believe it or not, was June 10th, 1963. And that is Mickey, Grandma's birthday. And I didn't know it. But she was 4 years old on the day that I wrote this last story about the chubby dragon. So anyway, sort of a weird story, but I just wanted to share it with you and let you know what I was thinking of back when I was 9.5. Maybe you can write a little book like this and maybe share it with some others. And I'd love to see it if you want to try to make a little book and a little story about something. This was my story about a dragon that ended up being a pretty good dragon. I don't know why I was interested in dragons, but obviously I wrote a whole book about dragons. Well, I love you, and I hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. And remember, I love you so much. Bye-bye.